much preferred keeping it in the key just now.
Yeah, right. So you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, moving along. We have a tendency to sidetrack.
And it's much enjoyed.
These rabbit hole tunnels of deep philosophical music discussion. So, I like that a lot. I think that's really cool. Because when I'm playing the 5 sus4 chord, right? Mm-hmm. That's the note. You should never use the 7 on that chord. Because there's a reason the chord is going to sound a certain way, and that's the suspension.
Pulling it back, yeah.
Right. So you resist giving in to the resolution of the chord while you're playing on top of it, right? So that's cool that you notice that and that you're in sync with it. Like, I don't know if you thought that through, but it was just, that's part of the chord, and the note that should have been in the chord, had it been resolved, you avoided it. Very nice job there. So, I think you did something a little different here. Let me see. Yeah,
I did
you did a da da da. You kind of did it more like this. Da, 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 da. And I like this because you made it a melodic minor. You threw a melodic minor in there.
Yeah, so that was following Johnny's lead. I think doesn't he do that?
Da, da, da. Yeah. So he does a 7-1-2 or 7-8-9, right? But he doesn't use the 6 the way you did, because a 6, like a natural 6, makes it a melodic minor rather than to just leave it ambiguous.
Well, can I maybe explain to you my my basis for that, and maybe I shouldn't take the credit then, because I was wondering if at this part right here, you know, where we're going from the so you see how I have D Ionian right there?
Yeah, you say D Ionian.
I feel like I might have been overthinking things.
Yeah, I think you're overthinking.
And that's what gave me the 6.
Oh, so you had thought it was a major thing.
I thought that maybe they were slipping into D major a little early with the
It just gave me this crazy idea. I can't believe that idea just hit me. But if you think about it, the chord precedes the chorus. And if you look at that chord can function 2 ways. That's mind-blowing. I gotta write that down. A over G in the final verse of Wolf at the Door. In the final, as the final chord of the verse in Wolf at the Door has 2 functions. 2 modal. It's a modal function, essentially. Modal scale.
This is great stuff, Warren.
Functions.
1.
It is the 5 over 4 of A harmonic minor. D harmonic minor. 2. It is the 5 over 4 of D major. It's both.
Yeah. And that's where I found the 6, was not because I was thinking melodically, I was thinking in a major scale.
Good that you said that. Okay, how we listen to chord progressions is always 2 ways, alright? So there's the vertical way, which we have sort of mentioned before, right? Where you have the chord in relation to itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chord progressions. I'm going to write this down too. One, have two relations. One is the vertical. Each chord relating to itself. The notes of each chord relating to each other, I should say. Two is horizontal. Is the notes of each chord relating. The chords each other in time. The instance. Over time is the right word. Okay. So that A7 the A over G is an A major chord, right? Technically it's an A7 because the G is like also in the chord because you have the seventh relation of A to G, but G is in the bass. So you could say A over G for guitarists, but if you wanted to like make sure that the G was part of the way you thought about the chord, G exists as the flat seventh in relation to A.
I get that.
So A, C sharp, E, G is an A7. Okay, so A/G is more of like a guitar way to put that chord. Like it's a very like a guitar specific way of referring to chords. People say C over G, but then C over G, G is already a part of the triad.
Yeah.
But then G is not a part of the triad in A. It's the seventh.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So guitarists don't say that A7 over G, but in classical theory, people make sure that they say that as part of the chord because it has some sort of relation to the root. And so it's a matter of like how explicit a chord name is, So that's just a little thing that you might want to know because sometimes you might see A7 over G and A over G, and people might finger it the same way. And that could be a little confusing, right? But they're the same chord, right? And you might hear, A7 over G because maybe somebody does want to be very explicit and they want to go. So I'll show you the different. Rather than
right.
It's how seventh-y
right.
the chord is, right?
It's a little too honky.
A little too much, right? I agree. So A/G makes sense if you don't want somebody to play two G's in the chord, which is what I did the first time. Too much, right? And then these are just little finesse things. Honestly, you can't even teach some of this stuff, I feel like, without context, You can never just say, this is a fact.
That's 2/7. Too much seventh.
It's very subtle. These are really subtle things that you pick up as you go through songs. You know what I mean? So this is one of those things. If you continue that concept, right, of vertical versus horizontal, the vertical chord is an A over G or an A7 over G. Both are correct names. But the horizontal relation is like what came before it, what comes after it, right? When it goes back to the top of the verse, it is squarely a harmonic minor chord.
Correct.
When it leads to the chorus, it's suddenly a major chord, right?
So
or it takes on qualities of the 5 chord in a major key. And the brain doesn't know which one it is till the next chord comes, right?
Right.
I mean, it thinks it's harmonic minor even when it's going to the chorus until the chorus reveals itself, right?
Because
Right?
And that, I do get it. Like, you major that 5th.
I should have freaking recorded this lesson.
I am recording this lesson.
Oh, you are? Like video?
No, I'm recording it audio if you want it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Maybe I will. We can. I'll edit out. Whatever our personal stuff from the beginning.
Actually, I always edit that out. I don't even start recording until we start.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, to all those listening to me.
Well, you can edit this out.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you recorded this because in context, you know what I mean. So many of these theory things start to actually make more sense. You can't just have these random facts about music theory, which I think is what scares a lot of people from learning music theory. They think it depersonalizes your musical approach. It dehumanizes it. And on the contrary, I feel like music theory actually enriches it if you contextualize it, right? Mm. So, continuing on, the horizontal relation of, A over G going into the chorus with D major, your brain cannot decide what happens for an instant. And I think that's part of the key that unlocks the magic of not just Radiohead's music, but a lot of music that plays with certain changing modalities and tonalities, whatever, that's a technical way of putting it. Just changing the feeling from happy to sad or major to minor or mode to mode or key to key, chromaticism or diatonicism, all that stuff falls under the same umbrella of things shifting in music, right? And that shift where your brain doesn't know what's going on is very uncomfortable for that instant in time in the listener, right? And then when it reveals itself as what it really is, or if it, takes you on this shift and the shift happens to be a pleasurable shift, suddenly that moment of uncertainty and confusion, which is really just the most infinitesimal slices of sound in time, suddenly becomes like therapeutic, some kind of elation, because you're like, oh shoot, it's like watching a scary movie. You have like no idea what's going to happen, and that anxiety or whatever, that dread builds up. Some people who like watching scary movies will understand this. Or suddenly, after the thing happens, right, after the scary thing comes out and spooks you, then there's this sudden relief, because the thrill of that moment has given way to some kind of calm,
cathartic in a way,
right? It's cathartic, right? It absolutely is cathartic, and composers know this, whether they have theory training or not. Songwriters know this, whether they have theory training or not. It's a very intuitive human thing. It's part of the drama, I think, in music that makes it so. Just such a great expression, right, of how people feel and think. But anyway, coming back to the music stuff, yes, A/G becomes something of that double purpose, and your brain doesn't know what to do in that little slice. When D major comes, it's just like, what? We started in this very carnival-esque, slightly somber, melancholy thing, and then it becomes this kind of light or I don't even know. I don't even have the words, but I mean, the song.
Oh, yeah.
That's a shift. The song has this weird shift, and when the chorus comes, I feel like that was the moment when I realized, oh, this song has so much to it. You can't get all you get out of it the first time you listen to it. It's on repeated listens, and it's just oh, yeah, here it comes, And you just kind of anticipate it, and it's just a really cool moment. I mean, I respect any songwriter that can kind of do that masterfully. I see that a lot in Radiohead's music, which is what I think draws both of us to it. In a way, it's that ability to kind of elegantly innovate off of something, or to move around within kind of many choices, and to make that one songwriting choice that kind of delivers that. So, yeah, man. So, do you have any questions about that so far?
No, I'm glad we stumbled into that because I was racking my brain a little bit as to how. I mean, I knew it fit as a harmonic minor, but I was kind of trying to figure out how. Well, you'll see as we get into the major part next, like where I was trying to see where to go when I was writing the melody, and it kind of lent itself if I just thought of it as major. So that is it's a revealing thing.
Yeah, and I would even maybe hide it. You know, if you were to really create a second guitar part for it, I would hide that because the 6, I feel like in the context of minor, sort of brings that melodic minor element to it when it's not necessarily there in the chords or the melody, the vocal, right? And so you're kind of adding something additional, whereas I think sometimes secondary guitar parts, not all the time, but sometimes secondary guitar parts, they can try to do too much, right?
Yeah.
And so like when the major part comes, I would also keep it hidden because the major part is the delivery, right? You don't want to spoil it almost. So I would keep that last line harmonic minor.
Yeah.
Actually, right? But in the context, the way you have it over the 5 chord, it has a melodic minor quality to it because there's no revealing of the major yet. In that moment in time. The brain doesn't experience it that way. Yeah. Cool, man. That was like really big for me too.
That was great. I like it.
Because I kind of knew that about like what chord progressions do when they shift something and like why that's cool, but seeing it kind of in context how you sort of thought maybe that theory had to do with a preceding line kind of being like a precursor. I thought that was like, yeah, it was just like a really nice way to underscore how important it is to appreciate those shifts in a song.
Thank you. I think it came out of necessity, but thank you.
Yeah. I mean, when we do like song analysis, like a lot of it is dry. A lot of it is just like, okay, cool, I got this note wrong, I got this timing bit wrong. There's a lot of work to revise it and make it, tight. Yeah. But then you have these little moments that you cannot appreciate otherwise, right? In a song.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's just no way because you don't know what the hell chord you're going to,
That's awesome.
And like how that relates to what your experience in your actual ear and mind is, in the song. So it's the closest thing we have to describe the mystery,
That's beautiful.
Man, it excites me. I get all nerdy stuff.
That's all right. That's why you're the expert. So the underscores here, were basically because I didn't feel like changing the timing to show that these were trying to be triplets. And also because if you don't put the underscores there, it wants to put the date.
Yeah.
So
that's just a funny thing with Google Docs. What you can do is you can put a little single quotation mark
before it,
and it won't show whatever date. It'll think it's not supposed to be a date. It'll think it's supposed to be just whatever you put after the quote.
Right on.
So, let's listen to it.
But that's not actually in the recording.
Oh, it isn't?
Because I didn't figure out all the key parts for this part, and I didn't figure out...
Yeah.
So I just, like...
That's awesome, though. I like your approach to it, even though I can't hear it yet.
Yeah.
Can you play it for me?
Yeah, I can, absolutely. So, you come out...
Something like that. So what I'm going to do is have you do that again so that through your speakers we can hear them both together in context, okay? Right. So I'm going to count it off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come out?
Yep.
Cool.
I think that you cut out a little bit here and there, but you know.
Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Better that time too. Cause I could hear you, so I could stay in time with you. 'Cause I couldn't hear.
So how did that sound on your end?
I think that some of my note selection,
Yeah.
like the major sevens, you know,
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
might collide a bit with
With the D major chord.
just
Well, it is a D major, and there are elements of that 7, that C sharp poking through
yeah.
when they play it.
So I felt good about it. It sounded pretty crystalline.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, so there weren't any notes in there where it's like, that doesn't jive.
Can we go to the what is it? It's like a D without the F sharp. So I did, you know, like, that last one.
Mm-hmm.
Still all my children, don't pay the ransom.
I think that last note you played was a D, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that works, but it's
seems
like,
overpowering.
it's the bass note of the chord,
Yeah.
so it's another taste issue. Do you want to double the root? You know, I think the root doesn't need to be doubled. The bass player's playing it. You know, the keyboard's probably playing it.
Right.
Like I think they're using like a mellotron or whatever.
Hmm.
It has that kind of circusy carnival vibe to
Yeah.
it. And the guitar is playing it, and the electric guitar is playing it. You know, so maybe you don't need to.
Yeah.
Right? So these are again, man, taste issues that only surface when you're actually like doing the song. But yeah, good. This is all really good. Yeah, shall we move on to the next part?
Yeah. And this part,
This is the that part, the interlude.
yeah.
Okay, so can you play it for me?
Sure. Oh, excuse me. Apparently I can't play it for you.
It's fine. Just wrote it anyway.
I mean, you only wrote it. So, as choppy as that is,
Try it again. Take it a little slower. hearing something like, I really like that because that highlights the chord they're using, which is a C add 9, right? You have this D on top of a C chord, and then having that E on top of it kind of has a little bit of that rubbing quality between the two notes that are very close. I like that. That's a personal, favorite thing that I like to do. I like seconds, right? A whole step or a half step, notes together.
Yeah.
Or maybe in context. In context, that sounds awesome. By itself, it's that sounds terrible.
Absolutely.
But in context, you have something like this, Let's see. This is hard to play. I'll play it like this. So that's a half step, right? Rubbing. And then, and then you have right?
Ah.
See what I'm saying?
What'd you throw in there?
So you have these rubbing notes. And, Radiohead uses the C add 9 there. Yeah, you can have that one. I didn't invent it, but, I could say, oh, you can have it.
That's awesome.
I didn't invent it. But yeah, so, I'm hearing that, and I want to highlight that's, cool. So it's funny. It's becoming a lesson on taste. But yeah, these are aesthetic things that I feel like you can't. It's just really hard to do it without theory, Coming into that second chord though, the second time you played it, I think you maybe made a mistake and played an open B string.
That one?
Yeah, second string open. By accident the second time you did it. But I just want to point out that that's not a part of the tonality in the interlude, because the bass note is a flat 7.
Right.
And then, so in relation to that, you have a 6 on top of it. And that 6 is not there, because the next chord is a flat 6. Unless you're trying to do some weird chromatic thing.
No, I was trying to... that was a mistake. I was trying to do the...
Right, and your finger wasn't there. That's all. Yeah. So here's a little thing. Here's a little thing about that next chord. Or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I like that. I like that you're exploring the other notes that are neighboring the chord that you're fingering, right? These neighboring tones are what create melodic movement from within the chord, right? Mm-hmm. So if I were to take the particular key at this point, which is a D minor, which is eventually going to show a D harmonic minor because of that chord at the end, right? Mm-hmm. If I take that scale, then I have all these notes to play with to make a chord melodic. Rather than static, I have a... And then I have a... Right? All those are part of the key of D melodic... D natural minor. And to...
What is that chord?
It's an F over A.
That's beautiful.
F in first inversion. Yeah, I really like that. I even prefer an F2 over A. Drop that third string down a whole step to the open. Yeah. If you want to go all the way with the first string, which you just did, it becomes a 5 5-note chord, right? The more notes in the chord you have, obviously, the more sophisticated it is, right? But yeah, anyway, I like that you're exploring the neighboring tones in these chords. That's the crux of like playing chord melody, right? Or finding that in-between place between a melody and the chord, which are like two not black and white separate things. It's not binary. And there's a spectrum, right? So how melodic is your guitar part? How chordal is your guitar part? You're finding that place in the middle. And like until you start doing that a lot, you can't really like ever explore creating a part like that.
Yeah.
You know? However, I will say that since we're talking so much about taste and subtlety and nuance today, I would say probably when you play it like that, there's like a ba-da-boom. That's like a big melodic jump.
Yeah, it is. So
like jumping like that is maybe not as smooth as you could, because there's so many possibilities, and if you want to make it smooth, I feel like that's a good thing to try to achieve with your parts. Now, so in no way do I think what you did was like wrong. It was just the idea of like, if you want to keep doing this, right, and explore that intersection between chord and melody, that smooth and connectedness, treating it like that melody is like one guy singing. You know, treating it like a singer that's singing a part that isn't jarring. That's something that's really nice for the ear. Now, you're not always going to be doing that because music that you're playing is not always going to be nice music, right?
correct.
But there's this like super like waltzy or classic feeling to this interlude that you can preserve, right? The whole like it makes me want to sway, right? And so like anything that goes along with that aesthetic is a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. The last thing I'm going to say is the last line that you came up with, which was like can you play that last line again?
So it's
I like that your highest note and your lowest note are moving in parallel. I think that's a really cool concept because it's like when you get both of them moving together, right? It with note in the middle, that's not moving. You have this note and it stays there.
I tried so hard to find one that would move, and nothing sounded as good. Nothing would come.
Fine.
That was great.
If you keep it stationary and the note on top and the note below are moving, you have some kind of contrary motion. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like singing in a choir. If all the singers are going up and then one guy stays on the same note, you have a shift again. That's the word of the day, I guess, right? There's another shift that your ear can play with. Your brain, when you're listening, is kind of like, oh, what? How come everybody's moving, but this guy isn't?
Right.
So that's a cool thing. I want to point that out. That's like a great thing. However, again, in the context of this particular song, I wouldn't change the bass note there from the G because that stays in the chord and it's going to clash with the bass and the other guitars. The G actually stays in the chord.
Mm.
So moving the bass note, if that were part of the chord progression, that would be a really great way to accompany the bass note movement with like a high note going 7 and then a 1, which becomes like a A over G and a A sus4 over A, which is root position, right? A sus4. You have that kind of movement with it, but that's not the chord progression there.
Yeah. And
if you're jamming along with Colin Greenwood, you gotta let the man.
Yeah.
Let the man work.
Yeah.
Right?
1,000 apologies, Colin.
He's like the nicest one in the band. He's just like super like, seems like a gentle spirit kind of guy, you know?
Oh, well.
Yeah. But anyway,
he lays it down.
he can get funky. He can get real funky. He has that funk background or whatever. But yeah, so we talked a lot about like subtlety and nuance and stuff today. It's I feel like sometimes it's almost like a little intangible, right? But you get what I'm saying. I think you're on the same page, where there are choices you can make that are theoretically, supported. However, aesthetically, maybe you could probably go the other way, or you could tone it down, or you could dial it up, right? Yeah. So much of like writing a part, now that the theory part is like really, we have this foundation laid, the thing that you need to build on top of it is more of a question of like theory is the engineering, but then architecture is where the beauty is. So you need to make sure this building stands, and that's what theory is, right? But sometimes the thing that really makes a building like a really important landmark or whatever is the look, is the aesthetic part of it. So there are many ways it can go, right? And finding that right way is a very personal journey, I think. No one can kind of tell you what choices to make. I can only like model certain things for you, and the bands that you like can model those things for you, and you can only sort of touch those things through lots and lots of time playing. And I think this is where a lot of people want to get to in lessons, but they're not willing to spend the time because it doesn't come right away. This is stuff that you only get to through going, through 100 bad choices. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I mean, not even bad, but just like 100 choices that are good, but not great. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So this is what you signed up for, right? This is like tough work. This takes commitment. You know what I mean?
This is why you got an email.
Cool. I mean, like, I try to do this stuff when I do my covers, right? Like, I'll play it note for note, but then I'll, like, throw in a little thing that is not from the original, right? I'll do something like, and I'll bend behind the fret on the second string and the fourth string or whatever. I don't even know if that's exactly what I did in the video. It doesn't matter. The point is, it wasn't in the original, and I wanted to make it mine for a few seconds. That to me is where I grow as a musician. Because it's one thing to learn the song note for note, break it down, understand it. But it's another thing to make it your own and to actually like grow a little bit, in your expression. So I always try to do that in a song. Like, I think I can point out, maybe that one and maybe a few others right now. But I'm sure if you like watch a tutorial or a cover, the tutorial gets more like note for note and like by the book, right? I'll throw in a few little things, but in the cover is where I try to inject a teeny bit of my flavor, And if I couldn't do that, I feel like, what's the point? Yeah. What's the point? Like, don't stop with learning a song, breaking down a song. Keep going to that third step, right? You have your playing, you have your analysis and like thinking about the music, and step 3, which is always creating.
Okay.
So you have to do that. That's the only way you can close the loop and like grow and keep challenging yourself as a musician. So, all of that is really, I'm glad we hit all those things today. I'm glad. It's really cool. The other thing that we can do today is talk about what you're going to do next week.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's also, if you have a moment, I know we only have a few moments, but I do struggle more than I think I should with figuring out the giveaways for what kind of minor this is, right?
Yeah.
Even though we've been doing that for weeks, for some reason it's still kind of...
Sure. I didn't even touch on your columns here, where you denoted the key, right?
Right.
So the first section is right like this. This is a 1. That's the same key.
Right.
And then
that one throws me off.
It does have a G Aeolian thing in it, because that note is a flat 6 of this chord, and it resolves, and suddenly, for a brief moment in time, okay, brief, again, this is vertical between just those 2 chords, and there's a micro, like, G minor.
Right.
Yeah. But in the context, it's only a temporary modulation because it goes back and it holds on to the same note as this, and the chord, the D goes here. And then finally you feel like it drops and leads you back. Right? So there's a temporary, a micro G Aeolian for those 2 chords.
Right.
Because that wrong note, aka the wrong note, at the flat 6, right?
The wrong note that makes the song.
Where is it? No, flat 6, not flat 2, sorry. It's a flat 6 of the G Aeolian,
right.
It's a flat 2 of D
sharp.
Right? So when you have that, okay, there's a mini departure, but the larger context is we're still coming back. The D is the main note as the tonic, right? So this part, again, it has that little bit of a shift. Mm-hmm. Again, these shifts, man, it's just a shift and a shift and a shift. So you have this next part where you go. That part I would just still say is D harmonic.
Harmonic because your A is majored.
Right.
And that I get.
Aeolian, a.k.a., natural minor. I'm going to make sure I put that in there just because Aeolian is another name, and also known as, right? D natural minor is D Aeolian. So you have your harmonic minor there. Now, harmonic minor is what that section is vertically, but like we said, as you get horizontal and you move into the chorus, that harmonic minor starts to give way in your brain just for a split second.
Right.
And it becomes used as a major 5 chord. Although it's got a different bass note. It's like a major 5 chord when you kind of think about the note relations.
Right.
That leads you to a major 1. And that 5 to 1, that major 5 to major 1 is the classic. They call it the authentic cadence. Mm. Remember, we talked about that. So, authentic cadence right there. Cool?
So cool.
Yeah, man. Okay, so now, one good piece of homework, okay? I'll just make sure that we go over all this. D Ionian, yes, that's the chorus, yes. But when we get to the next section, you go, those 2 chords, and then you get this one. And then you get this one, and then you shift when you go like that. How do I know it's a shift? Because when you go here, that's the 1 of the key, and then this is the flat 7, right? And then you go flat 6 and 5, and then what do you get when you get this chord? You get a 7. So again, 7 and flat 7. There's a shift there, right?
Right.
Those don't coexist in the same chord unless you're trying to do free jazz or some kind of funky, thing or chromatic thing. That flat 7 in the C chord, because the C is the flat 7 versus the 7 in the A major over G, there's a shift there. So you actually get 1 key until the final chord, which is another key. Right? Mm. So this one is D natural minor, aka Aeolian again, yeah. Right? And then the last chord is D harmonic. Okay, now remember, we have a natural minor going to harmonic minor, but you don't call that entire thing a melodic minor necessarily, because it's not the melody that is the main emphasis here. We're talking about how the chords are relating to each other. There's a shift. Rather than melodic minor, where the shift is a part of the key, we're actually experiencing like we're sitting in natural minor, and then we hop over to harmonic minor, versus like we're just in this nebulous place where it could be a flat 6 or a flat 7 or a 6 or a 7, depending on the way the melody is moving directionally up or down, right? So melodic minor is a very like there's nuance to when you call something melodic minor versus harmonic minor, because harmonic minor is harmony, melodic minor is melody. So that was something we mentioned last week. I just wanted to underscore it again, right? Yeah. So homework-wise, I feel like a good thing to do is, since we talked so much about nuance today, is to revise your part for Wolf at the Door. Like, give me a version 2.0. And based on what we talked about today, version 2.0 is really version 100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now, I don't want you to, like, feel overwhelmed or whatever by what we said. It's not like I'm going to judge you by, like, the ideal version in my head that you should be coming up with as a second part for Wolf at the Door. But have fun with it. Explore. Try different melodic and harmonic combinations, right? Try to have tension and resolution. And if you employ those things at all, I feel like you'll be like further along than you were this week, right? That's kind of the basis for how we judge, excellence and you growing as a musician. It's not like some kind of like, oh, we suck until we get to that point, right? Because I think that's a big tendency for musicians and artists in general, is to judge themselves by perfection, rather than to look at like, yes, I'm growing, yes, I'm improving, right? So try to revise and get version 2.0 out of your second guitar part to Wolf of the Door. 2.0 in reality, though, is many, many versions to find. We have to find it through a lot of mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Part 2, I would say maybe find another song that we've already done, so we don't have to introduce too much new material, and come up with something that will be a second guitar part. New second guitar part.
I like this.
For a previous song, previously analyzed song. Now, this analysis of the song needs to be modal, right? We need to know the shifts in the song, if there are any, because if you try to write a second guitar part without understanding the shifts in the song, you might get the architecture without the engineering, right? Your building's going to fall down a little bit.
Problematic.
Yeah. Cool?
So cool.
Good stuff, man.
I felt great. That felt great.